Greetings, Dave Franklin here. In our last video, which I entitled SCCM Project Fail, or Proj Fail, we saw what happened when we didn't install all the required prerequisites for the System Center Configuration Manager, Current Branch, and now what we're going to do is deploy all those prerequisites that are needed and show how easily it will install. So bear with me while we do this. So here we are where that situation was. All these different prerequisites didn't get installed, such as the remote differential compression, the SQL Server account, the proper account, the user state migration tool, also the deployment tools, and the pre-installation environment installed. So what we're going to do is go ahead and install those things. First thing we need to do in our download is to get a copy of the actual Windows ADK. Okay, and here it is. So I'm going to save this into my downloads folder. And now I will go ahead to the folder and we will run it. It takes a long time. So there's going to be parts of this video where we will just skip all that installation screen stuff that has nothing to do with what we want to do. So here it just says, where do you want to install it? I'll use the default place. And the next one is, do I want privacy? No, it's okay. Microsoft can see this. We're not going to keep it long. The license agreement we have to accept. And now here are all the things that are going to be installed. I'll go ahead, because I use it so much, and install everything except, for the SQL Server Express, because we don't need that. We have SQL Server 2014 actually running on the same computer. So we'll do everything and get rid of just SQL Server. It also, SQL Server Express, it also gets rid of the assessment services. That's fine. I'm going to say install to this. And now, before we pause the screen, let's go to Server Manager and check the remote differential compression issue. So we can click Manage, Add Roles and Features. And in the Add Roles and Features wizard, we'll say Next. It's role-based or feature-based. It's this computer, server name. And it's not a role, it is a feature. And if we scroll down, we should see it, the remote differential compression. So let's go ahead and select that and say Next and Install. And now that will install. Okay, and as you can see, that has installed. Of course, the installation of the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, or Windows ADK, is only at 3%, so that's going to take a while. So we're going to pause for a good long while. When we come back, we'll go ahead and set up the SQL Server account, and then we'll give it another try. Okay, and the Windows ADK is finished, so we're going to close that. And the next thing we're going to do is go to our domain controller and create an account for the entire forest. It's very important that we have a administrator level account in the entire forest, because the SQL Server databases and the management of them will be shared across multiple domains. We're going to set up actually a couple of domains here after this is installed. So what we need to do is an Active Directory users and computers. In the users folder is we're going to create a new account. And name this the SCCM SQL account. And, or actually let me put that down here, SQL. And we'll get rid of the space here. And we're just going to, not with the L, not with a dot, we're just going to copy that and put in the password for it. And we're going to say user cannot change password, and it never expires. Now that means I got to be careful. I got to go back periodically and change the password, and then do it on every place where the password is actually also set. So I'm going to say next on that and finish. And I got to be even more careful because I'm going to add this. No, we don't want updates. I'm going to add this to the domain admins group. Say OK to that and close this. Okay, so now I have that. Now I go back to my configuration server, my System Center Configuration Manager server. And here I'm going to go to SQL Server 2014 to the SQL Server 2014 Configuration Manager. And in SQL Services, I'm going to double-click the SQL Server service. So we're going to click Browse to find the account we just made. We need to change the location we're taking this from, and we need to get it from the domain. So we got to put in the credentials for that. Okay, and now the entire directory is where we're going to pull this from, and it's SCCM SQL. And check the name on that, and that looks good. We're going to say OK. In the password part, we're going to put in the password that we just assigned to this new account. And say OK. Now, the service itself, the SQL Server service, has to be restarted, and it will actually do that for us. So we're going to let that happen. And I'll go ahead to the SQL Server agent and also change the account for that. And again, change the location. I don't know why it didn't log me in as the domain administrator, but it looks like I've logged in as the local administrator. In the future, I would not do it that way. I would log in as the domain administrator. So SCCM SQL, check names, and that's OK. And I'm going to type in the password. And say OK to that. And just to check, I'm going to start it. See if I get any trouble with starting it. Let me go back and restart this one. I just want to be 100% sure. So we'll restart the SQL Server service. I know it takes a minute or two to do, but it's best to be sure. Okay, now that that's done, I can close this SQL Server Configuration Manager and go back to where I had actually had these failures in the last video. And I'm going to run the check again. So we say run check, and let's see what happens. Hopefully we won't get any more failures. We've got a couple of warnings. We don't have WSUS on this server, for example. Okay, and from what I can see here, it went okay. So now we can begin the installation. Now, it's going to take a while to install, and frankly, the whole purpose of this video was to show you what happens when you don't fulfill the prerequisites that are not explained very well anywhere. You have to go deep dive to find them. In any case, we have done that. We have met the prerequisites, and now it's just going to go ahead with the installation. Okay, and here we are. Everything is finished. Look at this. Evaluating setup environment all the way down through creating the program group. And, of course, setup is completed. We can click close. We can go back to the System Configuration Manager launcher and close this. We can now go to the Configuration Manager console. Open up the console and start adding stuff to the environment. Personally, I like to pin this to the taskbar. Unable to check for updates. That's okay. That's no problem. We don't have a service connection point yet. We have a number of site system. Hang on a sec. We have a number of site system roles we'll have to install or set up. We have to go and do discovery to find client devices and install the clients on them. So a lot yet to be done, but we now have our first iteration of the System Center Configuration Manager Current Branch, and that is it.